Welcome to Watch World. I'm your host, Faye Soteri. In this episode, I'm talking to Luke Brewer from watches.co.uk as we explore the fascinating side of pre-owned watches. It's been an area of the market that's taken some time to grow and has sat quietly as a niche, but over the last few years we've seen it explode and take over and dominate in so many ways. We're going to be talking about the buying process, and we're going to be talking about how collectors can protect themselves in the pre-owned market. And most of all, my favourite part of this episode is we will get to see and I will get to play with some incredible watches. Thank you so much for joining me, and please do subscribe to the channel. Hi Luke.
Good morning, Faye. How are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
Yes, not too shabby. Not too shabby.
Good. You are quite a geek.
Yeah, watch nerd,
connoisseur,
enthusiast.
Enthusiast.
You know.
Can you start by telling me a little bit about you and how your passion for watches and how you then started working with pre-owned product?
Going back right to the beginning, I went into the Ernest Jones in Kingston upon Thames at the age of 16. I loved watches then, and if I'm honest, it just kind of snowballed from Ernest Jones's to Goldsmiths up to Hatton Garden for a bit, and then I found myself in sunny Chiswick with watches.co.uk. So yeah, it's been a bit of a journey. I've learnt a lot, but you know, it's like working in a candy store. I can't imagine being anywhere else.
So you've seen both sides of the coin. You've done
Yes.
high street retail, luxury retail, new product, and then you've moved over to pre-owned.
Precisely. Admittedly, when I was in, you know, the authorised dealerships, or ADs, as you know, people colloquially call them, the parts I always enjoyed the most, primarily, were the kind of pre-owned sections, because they were so varied, so diverse, and you know, I just felt like there was quite a lot more personality a lot of the time, because you know, you had watches from the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and you know, not quite as cookie cutter as you know, sometimes newer watches can be kind of boxed into. So yeah, and you know, from my last role in the Goldsmiths, handling the pre-owned, little kind of collection in store, I knew this was kind of the direction I wanted to take it in.
So quite early on, you were hooked on with the interest, and diverse was the word that you used. I think that's great, because you're not looking at the same core collection replenishment.
No, exactly.
Day in, day out.
You know, so a nice variety. You know, you can find little joys in, you know, a wide variety of brands and price ranges, and you know, from dive watches to, you know, perpetual calendars. It's, you know, there's things to love with all of them. Lots of rabbit holes to go down.
Do you get the stories from the clients as well about their pre-owned? Because when you're buying something new, it's slightly different. I think there's a different engagement in buying a new piece. However, for me, I love the stories behind watches. So do you find that the clients are quite often willing to impart a lot? Some of them probably great stories, some of them maybe a little bit sad as well. They're really personal though.
Precisely. I mean, with a new watch, obviously you've got the history and the commercial story that, you know, is kind of pushed and, you know, connected to, which are absolutely wonderful. But in a kind of personal nature, they're a blank slate. You know, they're for you to begin and, you know, you to continue and, you know, maybe pass on down the line. But with a pre-owned watch, or or dent, you know, but with the vintage size, quite often you get some really cool stories, and you know, it goes beyond the kind of pedigree or the heritage of a watch. It's, you know, where has that been? Who wore that? You know, who wore that before you? And it's kind of like a look into the past, you know, and you know, from Navy divers with, you know, Tudor Submariners. Like my boss has a beautiful Tudor Sub Snowflake, which we don't have here today, but oh my God, and the story behind that's fantastic. Or, you know, take this particular Patek chronograph here. This watch was actually sold to us. It's actually been sold to us twice and sold back. And, you know, you just don't really get that with new watches. And, you know, you can afford to have quite a lot of fun. And, you know, there's just something about pre-owned watches that you don't really get with a brand new watch. Something to love.
You said you can afford to have quite a lot of fun. I want to talk about pricing in a little bit.
Of course.
But that's a piece of kit. It's a
Yeah.
hefty watch.
It is a hefty piece of kit. It's a bit of a gym workout for your left wrist, or no judgment, right wrist as well.
Why do I feel that? That's a lie. There's plenty of judgment there.
But feel free to have a little look if you want.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, that's glorious. Now this Nautilus has just been discontinued, hasn't it, on the bracelet?
Yes, it has. So it was already hard to get hold of, and now it's just pushed the prices up a little bit.
So I want to talk about the process. So those that don't really understand the pre-owned buying and selling process. But as I've got this incredible piece in my hand right now, the discontinuation of Patek on this particular piece, what's that going to do for your business right now?
For us specifically, I mean, I have every doubt that new versions are always brought out, but if it's one that specific collectors love, then it always drives pieces up, and especially with a piece like that where not many were produced or sold in, for instance, the UK. The scarcity involved is just ridiculous. So obviously it just pushes prices up, and it's just a bloody cool watch.
I think that's an understatement. And on my left wrist, thankfully loaned by watches.co.uk, I've got a baby jumbo Audemars.
A little mini jumbo.
Bimetal, which I think goes really well with the outfit.
I have to admit, slate grey dial.
That was not planned.
No.
That was not planned. So it was meant to be, is what I'm saying. And if we weren't here being watched by all these security cameras, I'd be heading to Mexico right now.
I'd be more nervous if you had trainers on, but it's okay.
Oh, you have little faith. So with these pieces that you've got here, I feel this has already become quite an unstructured conversation, but
apologies.
Not at all. I just want to delve right in because they are some beautiful pieces. So you've made a selection of 2 Pateks. Mm-hmm. So we've got the rose gold Nautilus.
Yep.
And then what else have we got? So I've got an OP.
The Tiffany OP41.
We've got a platinum Daytona.
Yes, we do.
We've got a Snoopy Omega.
Yep.
Lovely. And
then we've got perpetual calendar Nautilus as well, and then we've got a classic non-date sub in the newer reference 41mm version.
Okay, and my watch that I'm not giving back to.
Yeah, and the mini jumbo.
And the mini jumbo. Right, let's come back to these watches if I may. What I want to do is talk us through the process. I was about to say I've never bought a pre-owned watch. My first watch was pre-owned, actually. Yep. It was my Breitling Colt. Did a little post about that recently because my mum borrowed it, left the crown out.
Oh.
Exactly.
Was salt water or fresh water?
I don't know. She just thought she had cataracts because the condensation and had got inside. But I've asked. I put a plea out for any watchmakers to help me fix my first watch because I really love my Breitling. So I have bought a pre-owned. Yeah. However, I've not done it from a client perspective because I bought it from where I previously worked. Mm-hmm. Can you talk us a little bit through the journey, please?
Of course. So obviously it starts with people. Thankfully because of our reputation and being around since '96, we've cultivated quite a lot of essentially it's private clients with usually a lot of enthusiasts, watch nerds sometimes, or just slight aficionados. And we've only got one wrist, and sometimes with these, sometimes rather large collections, sometimes rather small. Whether you're a 3-watch person or a 20-watch collection, at some point you're probably going to change something out, and that's where we kind of step in, and that's where the primary bulk of all of our stock comes from, because it starts with a conversation, whether it's a Part X inquiry or just getting them in for an appointment to appraise the watch that they're thinking of moving on. We give them a guide offer online if we've spoken to them that way or on the phone, and then once we actually have the watch in person, we just check it out with our on-site watchmaker or technician, has a little look over it, make sure everything's good. We give them a final offer. If it's good, we shake hands. If not, no worries. But and from then on, we basically give the watch everything it needs. If it needs a service, we'll send it back to Rolex, or we'll send it back to AP or Omega, or say however you. But otherwise, if it's something that we might be able to do in house, then so if it's running perfect, okay, does it need a light polish? And then that's when we give it into our on-site workshop and do everything that we can. And from then on in, it goes over to our kind of, our little watch studio, as it were. We take some nice pictures, we write something nice, and we put it up online. And from then on in, it just goes through inquiries and then kind of the same process of booking an appointment, coming in, having a nice conversation, and, you know, sometimes, you know, making a deal, or, you know, sometimes, you know, looking for something else afterwards. But
how do you price the watches?
It's a blend of primarily going through kind of third-party channels and checking what they're up for online. It's obviously there's certain things and certain movements in kind of the marketplace that we're generally aware of. So it's just a case of double checking against even places like, well, it's primarily Chrono24. You know, find the exact same reference. What are they being priced at in the UK? You know, have they got their box and papers? If so, let's, you know, minimize it to just those watches. And then from that, it's having a little look around and trying to price competitively. And, you know, on those really scarce watches, sometimes, you know, you've got to look on older auction sites. Basically, what have they sold for in the past? Even going on eBay if it's really particularly scarce. And then the pricing strategy, you know, if it hasn't sold in a few months, then, you know, maybe we review it, we come back to it.
We've got a couple of those scarce watches here. I mean, that's quite a selection that you've brought to talk to me through. So what's the biggest challenge in building a reliable supply chain for second-hand watches?
I have to admit, location's always handy. Like if you're in Hatton Garden, great, everyone's going to go there naturally. But us being in Chiswick, obviously I can imagine that, well, my boss, when he was first starting it, probably worked quite hard to, you know, create a reliable pipeline. But now he's laid all the groundwork, you know, but mostly people come to us. Obviously we have an incredibly good domain name, you know, watches.co.uk, you don't really get much better than that. So a lot of the time it's through online means, or it's people who are local to Chiswick, and, you know, or they've dealt with us in the past, and, you know, they've kind of done the journey with us. So a lot of our clients are actually, you know, it's never really a one and done situation. It's more of they buy or sell something with us and then they keep coming back. And the only reason they'd really deviate is we don't have something, to be completely frank. So yeah, in answer to your question, it's online means, and then once it's online means, it kind of just goes a bit beyond that and becomes quite personal, and then basically just retaining them from there.
Many people still see pre-owned as a compromise. In your experience, when can second-hand actually add value as an investment? And I don't necessarily mean a financial investment, also an emotional investment.
Yeah. Of course, I mean, it's a good question, because obviously it's very dependent on what you're buying. Because if you want a Kermit, well, like an original anniversary sub, good luck buying one of them new. They're not being sold anymore. So, you know, you're going to go to the pre-owned market. But also, you know, even with the newer watches that are still being sold, if you can actually get a good deal on one sometimes, you know, take some IWCs and, you know, JLCs, Cartiers, you know, some of them aren't actually trading over list, they're trading under list. And a lot of the time it's actually a good opportunity to get a great deal, you know, because, you know, admittedly, these lovely little things, they're still a lot of money. But, you know, some of them, the retail price is, you know, you're talking 8-9 grand, but, you know, what, maybe someone's bought one for that. They've worn it a handful of times, and then they've come to someone like us, and, you know, unfortunately, you know, the value has dropped immediately by them wearing it. But, you know, for someone that wants that watch, is it not more beneficial to spend, you know, maybe 3-4 grand less for the same watch that you can build the exact same memories with? There isn't, you know, there's not really much difference, especially when we're talking about sometimes they're completely unworn 20-25 pieces that you could walk into a showroom and buy. But, you know, you're going to buy them for 2-3 grand less. I mean, you know, it's a no-brainer, I think.
Yeah. Authenticity is crucial in this space. What measures do you take to ensure that your clients are comfortable and safeguarded?
Of course. So thankfully, obviously, well, the owner Johnny and our director Tim, you know, they're industry veterans. They've been around the block. You know, I mean, there's combined 60 years of experience. There's not much that's going to fool them. However, every single piece goes through, you know, either my hands, Johnny's hands, Tim's hands, and then it goes directly into our workshop, and then it will be seen by our technician who's got a lot of experience, and then it goes through our watchmaker, who, again, I mean, he was a Rolex accredited watchmaker for 20 years, you know, and there's not much that can, you know, fool us. And, you know, the second that you kind of get that feeling that something might be awry, you know, you just walk away, you know. That's the key to it, because, you know, we've never been caught out on a watch in 29 years, and, you know, we don't plan on it. So we take every precaution at every single step, you know, including, you know, going down the kind of, is it a stolen watch? Because that's always a big topic when considering luxury watches. We run everything through, well, a watch registry, if you've heard of that.
So how does that work? Because that's probably got to give a lot of people confidence in buying a pre-owned watch, in how it protects them and their purchase. Because there's nothing worse than you go through the process and the desire, and then the journey buying a watch, and then find out that it's been nicked off of some poor soul.
Well, this is it. So, I mean, in terms of the buying journey, I mean, any person, to start with anyways, any person that has sold us a watch, you know, we've got scans of IDs, we know exactly who they are, you know, where they live, all of these things, and it kind of just builds a bit of trust, because, you know, stolen watches are a very big problem in London, more than pretty much anywhere else in the UK. So, and counterfeit and stolen watches, they're a big problem. So if someone knows that we're going to have, you know, their driving license and, you know, their passport, and we know where that, well, and, you know, home address and things, that it's kind of a discouragement really to do it, because all of these checks, we're going to figure out that, you know, it's either, you know, stolen or counterfeit if it is. But running things through watch registry specifically, it's just a bit of a safety net for both us and then any future customers, essentially. And it just gives you a bit more confidence, because I know, as you say, you know, there are a couple of hang-ups on pre-owned, and it's like, well, where did this watch come from? And, you know, it just gives you a little bit more faith in what you're buying, because, as I say, these beautiful little things, they're quite a lot of money, and you want to have faith in them. And, you know, you don't want to get a call 2-3 years down the line and that you've bought something counterfeit, or that it's a stolen piece of, but yeah, so that's pretty much our process on it.
Well, it sounds like you're offering peace of mind as well as incredible timepieces.
We try as best we can do, yes.
Okay. And beyond cost savings, what are the less obvious benefits of buying a pre-owned watch? So, for example, sustainability or craftsmanship, or perhaps something slightly more rare or unusual?
Scarcity always comes into it, because it's a case of a lot of, you know, the most famous watches in the world, the most sought after, coveted things in the world, they're discontinued. If you want a 6.2, 6.3 Daytona, you know, you want a Paul Newman, you know, you're not buying it new, you're buying it pre-owned. So it's having faith in the dealer that you're buying it from, and that's the most important thing. Obviously, sustainability. Yes, it is a bit more sustainable. I don't think they're going to be producing any less new watches, but you know, pre-owned watches, all of these wonderful things, they're not things to be thrown away. They're not single-use items. They're wonderful, and, you know, the longevity of them is absolutely incredible when you think about it. So all these pre-owned watches, especially mechanical pieces, you know, they can be serviced and serviced and serviced, and you know, your grandkid could be wearing it in 70 years, 60, 70 years time. Is wonderful. And that's kind of the joy of it, and it's the memories that they hold, and, you know, who had them before you, which is, you know, it's always quite a cool point with pre-owned watches.
Yeah, well, as I always say, a watch doesn't just tell the time.
No, it
tells a story as well.
Well, I quite often always say to my clients, you know, they're the most pointless, not pointless things in the world. You know, they're rather convoluted, but
we don't need them. We don't need them. There is not a necessity for them. However,
completely redundant. However, you can't beat the feeling of wearing a nice watch, regardless of price bracket. You know.
I'm pleased you said that, because my daily watch is a sort of barrier to entry. It's a much lower. I wear a Tissot on a daily basis. She keeps me safe.
Yep.
She looks great with everything.
Yep.
And it's just, I've got that security and that safety, particularly as we're talking about in London. And that's not to say that I don't enjoy my other watches, and I don't wait to wear them for a special occasion. It's a special occasion for me to wear them. Yeah. But there's a once it's under your skin, unfortunately. Oh. When did you know that this was a passion of yours?
So my dad's quite into his watches. He quite likes his old cars. Obviously, when I was younger, I could not drive. So this goes back to when I was like 12, 13. And, I was always taught to wear a watch. It was, a gentleman wears a watch. And obviously that kind of, it transcends that a bit now. But I've always, if I walk out of the house without a watch on, I'm forgetting something. And
do you feel undressed?
Oh God, honestly, it goes on for a good hour until I figure out, oh God, I've forgotten my watch. And there's that feeling hanging over me that I've forgotten something. And, it just doesn't feel right, regardless of what it is. If I'm on holiday wearing like a, maybe a Casio or something like that, or a Seiko, hell, like my lovely full loom Boulder, you get that sense of enjoyment, and there's always those wonderful little details that they just make you smile. And as you say with your Tissot, it's what you get out of it quite often. And speaking to a lot of collectors, their favourite watch is never necessarily the one that's cost them the most money. It's usually the one their dad wore for 30 years.
Yeah. Or,
the one they bought with their first big bonus, or their first paycheck when they were 16, and it's an old Amiga Constellation. It doesn't make any rhyme or reason.
There's a huge disparity between the cost of something and the value of something.
Yes.
What you're actually spending on something doesn't mean you'll get the same value or experience back from it. Precisely. And that's something that we overlook potentially in the market for new products.
Of course.
I think so. And sometimes you don't even know what that value is going to be until you've explored it and experienced it.
Precisely. You it's something that you can't quite put your finger on. It's intangible, and a lot of the time it's just subjective, and it might be a memory with your dad, or it might be the watch that you were married in, and sometimes it's something stupid like the entire dial glows. Sometimes it's just something cool, and these little things, they bring so much joy from a relatively, in many senses, redundant kind of function.
Well, the function itself isn't redundant because we do need to know to tell the time. However, what we don't need is a watch to do that.
Precisely. We've all got phones. We've all got a plethora of things that are telling us the time, but these go so far beyond time that it is quite funny.
Watches transcend time. Now that's a headliner,
completely.
Isn't it? That's grabbing. Do you know the difference notice the difference in mindset between people who buy pre-owned for practical reasons versus those who do it for lifestyle or status?
Not necessarily, because you just like with. There's a plethora of different types of watches for a variety of different functions. There's a plethora of different clients. Some, they're merely, they're their retirement plan and they don't wear a watch at all. And they put watches in safety deposit boxes when they think that those are, the ones to go for. You get ones that, they've got numerous watches from a variety of different, different kind of price brackets. And you can tell they just love them. And then you get people that, who I've got to respect because, they love a Submariner and they want every single reference of a Submariner. They want every single variation, and they want every single kind of, slight aging on, they'll only buy them if they've got perfect gilt kind of, tropical indexes and lovely aged bezels, or completely just a collection of just Daytonas, for instance, and that's what I kind of love, because the conversations you have, they're always so diverse and so varied, because there isn't one collector that's the same ever. We cling on to these tiny little details, and for every person that's different, which is half the fun of it.
How have you seen the pre-owned market change over the past? You've been here 4 years?
So I've been here specifically for about 4 years.
And have you seen any significant changes in the pre-owned market in that time?
Yeah, so when I first joined here, we physically couldn't buy watches quick enough. We'd buy them, we'd literally just get done taking pictures, go on the website, and then it would pretty much sell. And for about a year, maybe a year and a half, it was just like that. And, it was almost a given, especially with top-end pieces like Patek, platinum Daytonas. You couldn't buy them quick enough. And, pretty much no matter what you bought them for, they were going to sell. and the prices just got higher and higher and higher. And then suddenly everything had a pretty significant, reassessment, let's say, and everything came down a little bit. And in the past kind of say 2.5, 3 years, everything has slowly been kind of building up. We're finding, especially being in London where we are, people are still quite confident to be buying under 5 to about 7 grand underneath that, purely for many reasons: watch crime, things that they're just comfortable with, and it's still an accessible price point. But once you start pushing beyond that, I don't think it's going to reach the the dizzy heights that it was 4 years ago for at least quite a long time, to be completely honest.
So what do you attribute that shift to?
Of course, I think people just after COVID, everyone was home. They were they weren't really doing any work. And
yourself. I worked very hard during COVID. Thank you very much.
Oh, I was lucky. I couldn't work from home, but I was at home not working, but
Were you furloughed?
Yes, I was. And I did buy a lot of watches, just because
the content was there. You were able to do the research, and it lends itself really well.
Exactly, and I'm leaping through different rabbit holes, and these weren't particularly expensive watches. There were a wide variety of everything, and I'm just scouring eBay and things like that because what else have you got to do apart from go on your walk for an hour or two a day? And I think the whole market was building and building, and it just got to the certain point where dealers were kind of driving that, because we were buying them at higher and higher prices. But then if you're buying them at higher prices, the prices go up, and it's inevitable, because you can't maintain that kind of market for a very long time.
It was never sustainable.
No, it wasn't sustainable at all. And I think we're kind of starting to really reach for more sustainable times now, because the watches that are nice and consistent, they're the things like Speedmasters, the things you can wear daily, and old Breitling Colts, things like anything like that.
I can't wear mine daily now because
it's getting to that point as well.
No, purely because it.
It's
been killed. It's been killed. So
well,
I want a watchmaker to help me fix it, please.
Well, hopefully it has a resurgence.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you guys can look at it.
Unfortunately, Breitling are pretty strict, so that's going back to Breitling, or no one will fix it, pretty much.
I'll do my best on that one, because I'd love to wear it again.
Yeah.
But we're talking about all those old stories, and it certainly has a really important place.
Yeah.
And it was at the time for me. I spent £500 on it.
Yep.
Which in my early 20s was
a huge,
substantial amount of money. But I've never forgotten it, and it goes back to that storytelling element. But and even if I was to get it refurbished, when I get it refurbished, I won't wear it every day, but I want to be able to wear it when I choose to.
Of course. With the crown in.
Yeah. Oh, can you imagine the irony?
Oh God, don't.
I've done all this.
Done it. We've all done it at some point.
Well, hopefully I won't do it on your AP Baby Jumbo. Sorry, my AP Baby Jumbo. So we've talked about how there's been a shift over the last few years in pre-owned. How do you see it evolving over the next 5 to 10 years?
Of course, I mean, I think much of the same. Obviously, I think prices will just kind of slowly start creeping up. It's not going to be a lot of overnight wins in terms of, the kind of watches that are a bit more scarce. But I think definitely kind of the market, as I say, probably under about 7 grand. It stays nice and consistent, because those are the watches that people can wear and and feel nice about wearing, and the ones that aren't necessarily going to be taken from you, but you're going to have a nice conversation with.
Do you think that benefits both the client and the market, the pre-owned market, if there is that slow growth instead of those real peaks and troughs?
Of course, because it's more sustainable. We all get such enjoyment out of these things, and when watches get that expensive, unfortunately it takes some of the enjoyment out of it in terms of the kind of pre-owned market, especially because things that their retail is like 9-10 grand. They shouldn't be then selling for 29s up to 30s. It shouldn't really be like that, because with the pre-owned market, half the joy is that you can get the watch that you want in a reasonable amount of time, let's say, not pointing any fingers, but you know, and that's half the fun of it, you know, because instead of going on waiting lists or expressions of interest, you can get the watch you want, and you know, you can start those memories straight away. Whereas a lot of the time it's buying history based or a lot of waiting, and sometimes that kind of actually, you get bad taste in your mouth when you've had to wait 3-4 years for a watch that, you know, you've always had the money to buy. So it's not always the best start. Whereas with a pre-owned company, you know, you can buy the watch that you actually want straight away, as long as the prices haven't hiked up too much. So yeah, I'm a completely advocate of, you know, sustainable growth. It's nice, you know, obviously we want these things to hold their value, and you know, it is nice when things are a good investment. But you know, a lot of the kind of biggest enthusiasts and fans of and advocates of watches, I know, you know, it's quite nice to know that your watch has gone up in a little bit in value, but that's not really why you're wearing it. It's the memories and, you know, the feeling of wearing it. And, you know, it's a lot easier when that's sustainable.
Do you get asked about that investment question a lot from clients?
Yes, we do. And, you know, it's always a bit of a tricky one, because with any investment across any industry, there's no surefire thing. There's some watches that have historically done incredibly well, but there are some that haven't. And what I always tell my clients, more first and foremost, is, you know, go with your gut. You know, if you put it on and you get that kind of bit of giddy feeling and you're looking down at it and smiling, your stomach drops out a little bit, you know, well, that's the watch to go for. Don't stop thinking with your head, because...
Do you operate viscerally? Because I do with watches. I know instinctively if I love it or if it's... I mean, I when I was buying watches, that unfortunately, I wasn't always able to contain the facial leakage. And at times I would be... it was ghastly, and like my team or my boss would be like, I was never rude, but it was just how I operated. That doesn't mean it wasn't the right watch for somebody else, but for me, I had almost a vitriolic response to some watches.
I'm completely the same. I can't hide the expressions on my face, you know, and you know, or the eyebrows go or something, and you know, but this comes back to, you know, if you buy with your head, believe it or not, you'll probably buy twice. You will, because even on a purely investment-based purchase, unless it's literally going to be put in a safety deposit box and you're never wearing it, most people I know want an investment that they can wear. But even if it's a good investment, do you really want to be wearing it if you don't like it? That makes no sense at all. So at least if you go with, you know, certain brands or watches that are a little bit more scarce, but go for one that you do like, because then you've got the enjoyment wearing it, you can make some good memories in it, and look, over a few years, it most likely will go up. But if it doesn't, you've got the safety net of you've made a lot of good memories in it, and you know, then it doesn't matter that much.
If you could change one perception about the secondhand market, what would it be?
I wouldn't agree that there's really a perception against it at all. But obviously, people that aren't particularly into watches, maybe it's the same with cars. Oh, you bought a pre-owned car. In terms of watches, I mean, I really haven't met that many people that have any notions against them, purely because most people, they know really what they want to buy, and quite often that is actually, it leaks into vintage or really quite old watches or discontinued pieces. So, and then the people that do want a new watch, they still kind of want to save money. So, I mean, in terms of the long term, I really can't imagine it's going to be too long until pre-owned watches are, you know, overtaking new watches. Yeah, because it's a more cost-effective, sustainable way of moving forward for people that truly love them, you know?
Want to get into the market.
Yeah.
I think you've got the benefit of working for a great online retailer. And the offices are beautiful, your checks with the watches that come in, clients safeguarding. So it's probably the more about something appearing on eBay or just as a, you know, the mate down the pub that's got it's got a great deal.
Oh,
if it seems too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true.
Yes,
so I wonder
precisely.
if you've got that perception of the pre-owned market because you work in a very secure area of it. So you see the benefits from a whole 360 degrees, whereas if you're new into watches, the immediate thing will probably be an AD. Yeah. However, if you're looking for that the slightly more cost-effective way.
Yeah.
I'm an advocate for pre-owned. As I said,
Yeah.
my first ever watch was pre-owned, and it's the same. We're talking about cars. You're potentially going to driving a new car off of the forecourt. It's going to lose several thousands of pounds in its immediacy. It is similar with watches.
This is completely it. And, I guess if there's any preconceived notion, it's that the pre-owned version is going to be cheaper. But quite often that is not the case. And I bring it back to cars. Pre-owned Porsches, not always. There's multiple brands out there that, you can go for handbags or, nice shoes. In every kind of luxury market, the pre-owned market isn't necessarily, snuffed. It's more certain things, they will be a bit cheaper. But if it's a scarcity-based thing, quite often they're a lot more expensive, quite sometimes considerably so. They're 2-3 times their retail value. So if anything, if it was a financial thing, buying it pre-owned is actually a bit more of a bit of a flex, to be honest, than actually getting it through an AD a lot of the time. So
I want to talk about some of these beautiful pieces
course.
in front of us, and some of those actually are the case, aren't they? Where
Yeah.
the watches you've got are higher than the list price.
Of course.
So let's start with the 6. We've done a brief overview of what is here. Give me the goodies.
Of course. So where would you like to begin?
Let's go clockwise. So we're gonna do the PC.
Okay.
Perpetual.
Yeah.
Patek.
Let's go. So 40.5 millimeters of just goodness.
Sorry, this doesn't work. This doesn't work well for an audio, does it? It's a podcast when someone's looking at a watch.
Well, there's a disconnect. You pick it up and you look at it and you think, oh my God, that's fantastic.
It's beautiful. So this is steel.
Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit about the availability of this product?
Of course.
How frequently they come into you and where it sits in comparison to the listed price if you were to attempt to buy one at Patek on Bond Street. Yeah.
This comes back to the expressions of interest and things like that. Any Nautilus, they're notoriously hard to get at retail prices. This one is no different. They're beautiful pieces, though. You can completely understand why. And they only make a certain amount of them. And then from that finite amount, then there's only a small amount shipped to the UK. In terms of once it gets kind of that end of the market, it does get a bit on the rarer side of actually seeing them come in. So, I haven't lost it. I'd still get a bit giddy when pieces like that come in because you don't see them as often, and there's something about putting a watch on like that it's not tangible. It's just a feeling you get, and it just transcends all function of time, doesn't it? To herald back to what we said earlier, it's a phenomenal piece.
But for most people, respectfully, that's a deposit for a home.
Oh, completely.
The difference alone, not the price of the watch itself, the difference between retail.
Yeah, exactly.
And where would that sit now in the pre-owned market in terms of pricing roughly?
I think we have that listed for roughly about 75 grand.
Okay. And should you be able to go into Patek and...
So if we were going, that one on that bracelet, I believe it's in the past now, but it's probably, 35, 40 grand in terms of the retail price. So, twice over. So.
How long will that sit in your window or on your website?
Do you know what? That will just, it'll wait for a particularly avid collector, or someone that's been after one for a while and has, can't find a good example because, a lot of these things, it's not just scarcity, it's the condition.
I was going to say the condition on that is beautiful. Did it come in that way, or have you looked after it?
No, we have not touched that at all. No, it came in from a pretty avid collector. It's quite a few watches. He's wearing a handful of times, and then he'll trade them in, move into something else. Obviously, not everybody is able to do that, but it does mean that we've got an absolutely phenomenal watch in a phenomenal condition, and we wouldn't really need to do anything for that. And to be honest, with any kind of Patek KP, we wouldn't be polishing or doing anything on site anyway. Those are going back to direct to manufacturer.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to go around clockwise because we've got another Patek. Let's do a bit of naughty passes here.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually really would love I would love to talk about the Snoopy, the Speedmaster.
Snoopy, yeah, Silver Snoopy Award. Yep. Right. If we
So
go for this.
silver, that's significant as well because there are different variations. Can you talk us through why Snoopy is important to Amiga and a collector as well?
Of course. So the Silver Snoopy Award is, it's basically hovering around kind of space, the space race, and astronauts. And there's 3 iterations of this. There's so the first one is a black dial with a lovely kind of full color Snoopy. Then you've got the Mark II, which is a white dial, which has a really cool kind of motif of Snoopy looking up into the skies, with the little kind of motto of like, what could you do in 14 seconds? And then you've got this lovely version, which is for their 50th anniversary of the Silver Snoopy Award. And that's got the lovely kind of vinyl kind of case back, which, features Snoopy on a little rocket going past the moon and Earth, which is just... It's whimsical,
smile.
it's
Look,
fun, it's cool,
yeah.
and as adults, it's...
Well, that's how I felt about the Kermit with Oris, not the one that's got the nickname, but because you can't be angry with Kermit, and it's the same with Snoopy, and he's just sitting there with his little helmet on. What was the significance for Snoopy for Amiga?
So the Silver Snoopy Award is, I believe, is essentially an award given to, American astronauts when they're qualified. And historically, Speedmaster been the watch that has been worn in space, essentially. And that basically just commends that and kind of heralds back to the history of, the space race and landing on the moon and what have you. And, but in a cool and kind of whimsical and a fun way. And
it's joyous.
It is.
It's
joyous.
Joyous.
And it brings a smile to your face.
Yeah.
It's like you were saying with the Kermit Oris, and on the day that you get Kermit in the little date and like aperture, it makes you smile.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I really do enjoy about the industry, that can often be quite traditional, stuffy,
stoic. Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps. You're using much. Yeah, your language is much better than mine today. Stoic is a very suitable word, but when you've got, and it's still legitimate. Has legitimacy to the brand because it's relevant. However, the fact that it's still embraced, and you've not stopped smiling since we talked about this watch.
Yeah, because it's just a fun watch, and you can't help it. And you see, I particularly like the Mark II with what could you do in 14 seconds, which again has a pretty cool story behind it. I don't know if we can go into it at the moment if we have time, but it's just such a cool history, and
Go on.
So essentially, basically, all of they're attempting re-entry to Earth, as I remember it rightly. It's been a while since I've heard this story, but on re-entry to Earth, basically all of their systems basically were kind of failing, and all they had was a mechanical Speedmaster, and basically they had to readjust by a certain degree or angle to enter the Earth's atmosphere properly. And basically they were resetting this Speedmaster every 14 seconds to make sure that, they were on the right trajectory and path. And, obviously the Speedy came through and it stood up to the test. But it's quite cool where, all of this technology kind of fails, and what are you actually using to make re-entry to Earth? A mechanical Speedmaster. And it's just cool. It's something like ethereal. It's just, it goes beyond words. It's just fun. Fun and so cool.
I don't think that story is utilised enough in the Speedmaster story. I know if you know a little bit about Amiga, then it will be something that you've come across. Yeah. But it should really be something that 14 seconds is it's an incredible thing to lean back onto, because to your point, with technology as it is, and even then they would have used a lot of technology to get them up there in the first place. Exactly. But for it to have been a little chronograph that have
it's just so cool. And that's why I like, at least a third of all of our clients, they've had a Speedy, they want a Speedy, or they've sold one at some point. They've had one because it's something that just ignites the the little boy or the little girl in all of us, because space is that there's not many things that are cooler than that, and then pair that with Snoopy, and it's a winning combo.
I don't even know where to go from now in this glorious box of.
I know, it's kind of. I know.
Let's talk about the Sub.
So
this has got to be a very popular model for you.
Yes.
In many guises. This is a newer piece, right?
Precisely. It's more of our bread and butter. Things like that, Speedmasters, we sell quite a lot of. That is the newer 41mm, so current line, non-date version of the Submariner. And and I mean, the story behind the Sub, you know, it's it is probably the most famous tool watch in the world. And, you know, and every iteration is cool and has its own quirks. But I have to admit, I've always been more of a fan of the non-date over the date, but that's just a personal preference thing. Yeah, it looks good.
I mean, I'm going to say all of these have matched what I'm wearing today.
I know, it's
I mean, not by design.
It does seem planned now.
It
Now
does,
you
but
mention
I
it.
assure you it is not. I like the non-date as well, actually. It's cleaner, it's a cleaner dial. The Cyclops.
Yeah,
over
I know.
The date. It just gives a bit more balance on
Precisely.
the watch, doesn't it? And why do you think there is so much demand for this particular model?
Obviously, scarcity always comes into it, but if you actually just...
Is it that scarce though?
I mean,
or is it just the demand?
Reasonably so. I mean, definitely in the past, I believe it was probably more scarce than it is now. But you know, there's just, you can see why people want that. It's like if you look at a standard Speedy or a Seamaster or, you know, Navatimers. All these watches, they've got certain design quirks that just make them unmistakably cool, and you can't get around it. It's a very handsome watch, and it's a joy to wear. It's simple, it's uncluttered, it's not trying to be anything that it's not. And all the best watches, that's kind of really where it goes, because it's not trying to imitate something else. It's something all on its own. And you know, you can never really get around that. But that's why so many people, you know, they want a Sub, they've had a Sub, you know. It's just one of those iconic pieces. Do
you have a favourite Sub?
I like like maybe a 5512 Sub, like, you know, obviously non-date, but I do, if it's more modern, probably like a 14060 two-liner.
Okay.
Yeah, two-line, uncluttered. Then you've got, you know, modern quirks, but you've still got that aluminium bezel. It develops its own kind of personality.
See, this is the level of detail that I love. From the connoisseurs and the enthusiasts. I crudely called you a geek earlier, but I was I couldn't have got. No, it's glorious because your face lit up then, and that's what happens with watch collectors and the watch community.
Yeah,
it's that real enthusiasm, that love, that desire, and that, you know, understanding those nuances on the different what enthusiasts and know is actually so much more than so many industry people. And I say that from somebody who's got 20 years background. I learned so much from the community every day.
Well, do you know what? Especially when you have just that love of it, you go down all these little rabbit holes, and then you want to learn as much as you can about it, and you know, it usually ends in a watch purchase. But these are the things that kind of make this hobby so fun, and this, you know, because you meet so many different people, you hear so many different stories. And even if I wasn't working here, I have lots of friends I've met purely at, you know, basically, you know, meet up watch days and things like that. And it you know, it goes so much beyond, you know, buying or selling watches. It's the enthusiasm for them, and you know, it comes back to what I was saying before. There's no two collectors that are alike. A little bit like, you know, certain watches. It's, you know, they've all got their own quirks. They've got their all fun parts, and you know, things that make them special.
And speaking of special watches, now this is going to be this is more of in this collection the entry price point. I'm not going to call it barrier to entry. However, Oyster Perpetual, Tiffany dial, 41 mil.
Tiffany, of course.
So this is a bit of a legend.
Yeah, that went a little bit mad when it first was brought out, because you're thinking a watch that was around about £6,000, or just shy of £6,000 retail. And pretty soon people picked up on the fact that, you know, it's the Tiffany blue, and literally within about a month, I mean, they went absolutely ludicrous. That one, the coral red, and the yellow, all of them went slightly astronomical for a little bit.
So they released these just after COVID. I remember there was the first time we'd ever seen as buyers watch product from Rolex outside of Basel or Watches and Wonders or the watch fairs, and it was really lovely to start seeing some flashes of colour, some real exuberance. Rolex aren't known for their colour on their core collection. You can get some special
you can
dial
go quite
pieces.
high up, and then you get zebra set Daytonas, but or like sure, this is it, but it's a completely different buy. But these entry level pieces, it was Rolex kind of having a little bit of fun with quite an accessible price point, really. If you're if you're in the market for a Rolex, anyways. Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, even at their retail price, they're still a lot of money. They are, but in the grand scheme of Rolex, Patek, AP, it was quite a cost-effective way to have a bit of fun. But even now, those were topping well over 20 grand at one point.
For a watch that at retail was about £6,000.
Precisely.
In a location such as here, 20,000.
Yeah, and I think we have it up for about 15, 16 grand now. So it's come down a little bit, just as more are coming available. Just like with anything, and coming back to scarcity, as more are becoming available, then, the prices kind of realign a little bit further down. But, in the future, as long as the demand is there, the pieces that are kept in good, reasonable nick, they're going to just continue climbing up.
I'm astounded by that. I don't know the pre-owned market. My understanding, limited understanding, is of current new product. That surprises me even now. 15 grand.
Yeah, no, it honestly.
How long will that stay on your site for?
I'm pretty sure it's pretty much under offer right now at the moment.
But are they wearing an outfit like mine that it will go with?
Potentially, I don't know. They might have matching shoes. I don't know. But it is just a fun watch. And if we talk about these things quite a cavalier manner. Believe it or not, I don't have a platinum Daytona myself, nor do I have a full rose gold.
Is that what we're moving on to now?
We can precisely. But
there's some special watches.
This is it
from what you've got in stock at the moment. There's been, we've had a little bit of variety, but we've got two Pateks. This one here, this is an incredible watch. It's a beautiful watch. It really is.
And you know what? It's not necessarily the thing that I would wear, because I'm not quite into rose gold, but even just picking this thing up, there's just something special about it. It's the weight of it. It just feels reassuring. There's the attention to detail that,
look, it's risk
see for yourself. Precisely.
It is risk born. There's no getting away from that. Talk us through this watch while I'm clumsily trying it on.
So, full 18 karat rose gold, quite a reasonably complicated, chronograph movement. You just can't really go wrong. But obviously, it's not necessarily a watch I'd wear in central London. Put it that way. And for good reason, because the prices of these have historically been absolutely loopy. I think when the first time we bought this watch, we bought it just after the client had paid 60 grand for it. Then I think we bought it.
He'd paid 60,000
retail. He paid 60,000. Then we bought it. I think we bought it for around 150. Then Patek found out that they thought he was selling the watch.
Well, he clearly was.
He was. So then we sold it back to him. I won't give numbers, but
why did finish the story? I'll come back to the questions.
So then, don't worry, we'll circle back. But so then he bought it back to show that he still had the watch. And then, a year and a half goes by, and he wasn't wearing it as much, and then he sold it to us for the second time. And then at that point, obviously, by that point, all of the kind of prices had kind of come down a bit, and that was that realignment we were talking about earlier. And then we bought it for, I think it was about 110, and I think it's now up for about 120, 125. So it's a very heavy hitting piece. Heavy being quite in both senses.
If you fall off a boat wearing this, you're not.
Oh, you're going to sink.
Back up.
You are.
You're going straight to the bottom. why would the client have panicked and bought the watch back from you?
Of course. So this harks back to expressions of interest, or what were, used to be known as waiting lists, and it comes back for, brands like AP, Rolex, Patek. And it's the watches that pretty much everyone wants. You need to build up a buying history. Well, they say you don't, but you do. It's like with Hermes bags and and again Porsche. All of these kind of luxury brands, they want to know you. They want to basically see you buy a few watches before you get the one you want, and this sometimes can take years. So, and that particular client was cultivating that relationship for 6-7 years. He'd bought multiple watches from them. Not always ones that, you could, flip for money, say. And that was the first one that he could kind of, say flip for money. And he didn't want to keep. And essentially he did it. And obviously that kind of came back to bite him purely because they thought he'd sold it, which obviously he had. So he had to quite quickly buy it back from us to basically make sure that the relationship wasn't ruined, because otherwise he's not going to get any other watches from them.
Thank you.
That's all right.
It's a fascinating journey, isn't it? Because
it really is.
Who has the right to say to a client once they've spent their money on what they can do with it? However, the brands need protecting as well. It's some of the best marketing you could ever really think of. If you think about it, it's incredibly frustrating for us as clients and customers. But also it also kind of keeps a lot of the pre-owned market kind of running, because I always say to tell someone that has a good amount of money that they can't have something, and believe it or not, they want it a little bit more, and this is this builds up the scarcity, and believe it or not, it matches the outfit yet again. I'm pleased.
Are you sure you didn't plan it?
I didn't know which watches you were selecting for us to talk about today. So we've gone from the Patek,
and the Platinum Daytona.
And the Platinum Daytona. Now, you don't often see these either.
No,
this is quite a scarce piece for you to.
This really is.
Can I ask a really quick question about watches.co.uk and the watches you've got here?
Of course.
Is it because of your reputation that you're able to secure this level? Because obviously you've selected some very sexy pieces for us to talk about and for me to play with. But is that because you're trusted enough where people actually, they will part exchange their watches or they'll sell them here? Or is it a state of the market?
I think it's definitely because there's a lot of dealers out there. There are some absolutely great dealers out there, and sometimes like with everything, there are some not so good dealers. And we're very fortunate, and I'm quite fortunate to have joined an independent watch dealer that we've been around since '96, and it takes time to cultivate those relationships with people. So and for the people that they have gone through these expressions of interest, and they have bought a fair amount of watches before, once they get offered these pieces, if it comes time for them to sell them, they want to go to someone that they can trust and just have a normal conversation like a human. It's not necessarily all about money in those contexts. It's building that relationship and having that trust that that we're not going to offer them a really lowball price, and we're trusting them that they've got it through usual means, and it's not stolen or anything nefarious. So there's a lot of backwards and forwards, but I think our reputation and our whole company's built on trust, and it's one of the reasons I love working here, because it's refreshing.
Look, it's been a real pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for opening up your stock packages and stock books.
My pleasure.
For me to talk to you and play with some of these glorious pieces. And there are some incredible watches here, some very special pieces that I don't often get to see. The only times on occasion have been at the launches when I'm being showed them by the brands themselves. Very rarely do I come back to see these. And I think the values of your company at watches.co.uk, you buy, you sell, but trust is that key thing that keeps coming back to.
It's the cornerstone of everything that we're kind of built on, if you see what I mean.
Well, I mean, trust is one thing. We can't get out anyway because it's Fort Knox every time.
Well, I hark on about trust, but we're behind four quite heavy doors here.
But it's really important as a consumer. I'm very ill-educated
Yeah.
and inexperienced in the pre-owned market. So what you've talked me through today and how people can approach, whether it's here with yourselves or whether it's with another independent or pre-owned market retailer, I think there's quite a lot to be said, but that authenticity and I actually, what I enjoyed the most of the conversation, you said it starts with people.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time today. I've
My pleasure.
loved every minute. I've loved all the watches, and
I know it's time to give it back. I'm sorry.
but why though?
Make me an offer.
Luke, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Hopefully we'll speak to you again soon.
I
Take
hope
care.
so. Take care.